Greetings, I am Aramanda, and you're listening to me, read a fanfiction. Brotherly Bond, Chapter 5.
It's this way. It has to be,
Skulu said as she led the foals in their speedy trek through the Whitetail wood. Knowing that their pursuers would no doubt still want to find them, they decided that the only course of action left was to get back to Ponyville and find help.
We've been going this way for a while now,
Appleboom said, occasionally looking behind her back.
I don't think we're getting any closer to Ponyville. We have to be. I just know it. At least, I think I know it.
Pipsqueak looked around him. Trees and more trees. Maybe a bush now and then, but he still saw trees. He and the Cuimar Crusaders were desperately trying to find the way back to Ponyville, back to the safety of their hometown, and away from the danger of the pack of wolves chasing after them. He thought that they had at least lost them at some point in the forests. The howling had ceased, and with the exception of the pony's hooves beating against the soft grass, all was quiet. The Whitetail wood may not have been as dangerous as the Everfree forest, but at night just as dark, and to a lost pony just as scary. Skulu started to slow down. All the running had taken a toll on her, as well as the others. With no sign of the wolves in sight, they figured it was safe, at least for the moment.
Okay, let's just take a breather,
she panted slightly.
Everything looks the same,
Sweetybelle whimpered out.
It's like a maze. I want to go home. Calm down, Sweetybelle.
Skulu looked at her.
We all want to go home, but we won't get anywhere by panicking. Staying calm hasn't helped either,
she cried out.
Shh,
Applebloom said, pressing a hoof against Sweetybelle's mouth.
We don't want those wolves to hear us. I think we ditched them a while ago,
Skulu informed the ponies.
They're probably just as lost as we are.
Pipsqueak shivered a little. It was the early autumn months, but it seemed that the cold was coming earlier than expected.
Are you okay, Pipsqueak?
Appleboom looked at him with concern in her eyes.
Yeah,
he nodded.
Just a little cold. Me too,
she frowned.
I had no idea the woods were this frightening at night. What if we never get home?
Pipsqueak had that thought too. Ever since he started to notice the seemingly endless trees, he questioned whether getting home was a possibility.
We'll be okay,
he whispered quietly, although he wasn't sure if he was trying to convince Applebloom or himself.
We'll find our way home. You'll see.
Applebloom nodded as she let out a brief smile. Brief because she noticed something in the darkness just behind Pipsqueak.
Pipsqueak?
Pipsqueak turned and faced the darkness, seeing two very beady, very threatening yellow eyes glaring at him. The pair was joined by another set, followed by another. Finally 3 sharp rows of teeth appeared.
They found us!
Pipsqueak shouted in alarm.
Run!
All 4 ponies started to scream as they ran forth, the wolves jumping out and snapping their teeth at them. Grrr! Nate grinned malicious as he watched them run.
They're scared. I can smell them a mile away. Dinner will be served soon.
Pipsqueak and his friends continued racing through the forest. Knowing how close the wolves were, they were using all the speed and breath they had left to escape. Every moment seemed more and more hopeless for them. No end of the forest was in sight.
Where is it? Where is it?
Skulu shrieked, referring to their hometown.
Some pony! Help!
Suddenly her hoof caught a tree root, and she felt herself propel forward.
Ah!
She hit the ground hard, letting out a pained cry.
Skulu!
Sweetybelle shouted as she dashed to her side. Applebloom wasn't too far behind, and ran to her other side, trying to help her get back on her hoofs.
You have to get up. We can't stop now. I can't run any more,
Skulu said, tears coming from her eyes. Every muscle in her legs was sore. She just couldn't find the strength to move them another step.
I can't. You have to,
Sweetybelle pleaded.
We're not going to leave you behind.
Pipsqueak stopped before them, panting and watching the scene in silence. Had she given up? And what about the other two? He knew they would never leave her to those wolves. What about himself? Was he willing to keep running to save himself?
Pipsqueak!
Applebloom looked over at him.
You can still make it. Run! I...
Pipsqueak was panting, exhausted from all the exertion. He knew that he could keep running and maybe even have a chance. It was probably his last chance to safety.
I won't,
he shouted firmly.
I'm not leaving without all of you. Pipsqueak,
Applebloom whispered. Her eyes widened in fear.
No!
Pipsqueak spun around and saw the three wolves approaching slowly. Their low, satisfied growls escaped their gnashed smirks, as they were perched in a hostile stance. They stopped and observed the frightening foes, finding amusement in their predicament.
I never had to work so hard for a meal,
Nate said with a low laugh.
I must be so hungry.
Applebloom closed her eyes and wrapped Scootaloo in a tight hug.
I'm gonna miss y'all. Me too,
Sweetabelle said as she followed suit, tears peeking out of her tightly shut eyes.
Cutie Mark Crusaders. Cutie Mark Crusaders.
Scootaloo was the last to close her eyes. All three had succumbed to the fear and were now left with the tension of waiting for the end. Adorable. Nate licked his slobbering lips greedily.
Now who wants to be first? How about you, small fry?
He looked over at Pipsqueak, who was now ducking down with his forehoofs over his head, shaking violently.
I want Patch.
He whimpered out as he started to cry.
I want Patch.
Look at that, boys, Nate said as he laughed wickedly.
He's crying. He's so scared he can't stop crying.
While the other two wolves were initially hesitant of joining along, they soon started to laugh as well. The laughter grew louder until it was to the point of uproarious. The sound seemed to pierce Pipsqueak's ears. He wished it would stop. He was being laughed at like he was just an amusing toy. He just wanted it to be over. Then all was silent around him.
Pip. What?
He shot his eyes open.
Pip. Who's there?
He said with a quiet weep.
You can't let them do this. You need to stand up to them.
That voice.
But they're bigger than me. And scary. And I'm...
You're small. I know that, Pip. But that doesn't matter right now. You need to stand.
No!
He shouted out.
I can't.
Yes, you can. You have to. You don't have any other choice right now. I've always said you were stronger than you think you are, because it's true.
Patch?
There are times when you need to stand up for yourself, and this is one of those times. Look behind you. Pipsqueak turned his head slightly and looked over. He saw Applebloom, Sweetabelle, and Scootaloo all huddled close together and whimpering quietly. You're not just standing up for yourself, you're standing up for them as well. Those fillies gave you their friendship. They gave you comfort. And now you need to give them something in return.
What is that?
A chance for all of you to escape. Pip, stand up. Pipsqueak waited a moment. Should he trust this voice? He looked up at the wolf, who was still biding his time as he stopped laughing. Slowly Pipsqueak rose to his hooves, standing, albeit shakily.
What the?
Nate let out a snarl.
The little crybaby wants to be a little hero now. Take a break, boys. I want the first bite.
Just wait a moment, Pip. I'll tell you what you need to do. I'm not going to leave you until it's all over. I promise.
Oh, okay.
He nodded slightly, the tears now slowing down. With a loud growl, Nate charged forth, ready to strike.
Just a little longer.
Pipsqueak could see the wolf's eyes clearly, and every last one of his teeth as he opened his mouth wide.
Pipsqueak!
Applebloom screamed in terror as her eyes shot open.
Now, give him a good buck in the jaw.
Pipsqueak quickly turned around.
Ha!
Using all the strength he had, he shot his back legs up in a buck, praying that they would hit their mark. And did it ever!
Ow!
Nate was practically knocked off his paws and fell onto his back, holding his aching jaw in pain.
Ow, ow! You little ow! I did it!
Pipsqueak said in disbelief.
But how?
Strong back legs run in the family, Pip. Well, on Mum's side at least. Barnes snapped his teeth and let out a low growl. Let's see you try that stuff on me. Roar! He jumped forward, attempting to pounce on the colts. Pipsqueak spun around and let out a frightened yelp.
Ah!
Just take a big step to your left, Pip. Pipsqueak did as ordered and quickly jumped to the left, missing Barnes as the wolf slammed face first into the hard ground.
Gah!
The wolf said as he lifted his head, dazed from the impact. Arr! Now it's my turn. The last wolf, Cletus, ran up to Pipsqueak and swung a clawed paw at his head.
Duck down!
Pipsqueak nimbly lowered his head and body into a crouch, dodging the paw completely. Barnes, however, felt the full force of the attack on his own head and yelped in pain. Hey! Barnes snapped at Cletus. What's the big idea hitting me like that? Sorry, Cletus snarled out. You got in my way.
I'll show you getting in the way.
Barnes threw his own paw at Cletus's nose. After a quick yip from the struck wolf, both snarled and snapped at each other as they started to fight. Pipsqueak backed away from the tussle, not wanting to be part of it. He looked over and saw the first wolf getting back to his feet, apparently recovered from the strong buck. Grrr!
You little...
Nate gritted his teeth and glared at the colt.
I'm gonna get you this time.
He reared back and pounced forward. He's jumped too high to get you. Just run underneath him. Pipsqueak nodded and charged ahead. Just as the voice said, he easily ran underneath the wolf and was safely behind him. Nate landed on his feet and looked over.
I missed.
Suddenly he felt something bite at his leg.
Yow! What the?
Soon a paw slapped him in the face, followed by a good snap on the ear. He had been involuntarily dragged into Barnes and Cletus's battle.
Now's your chance, Pip. Go to your friends and keep running the way you were going. I'll guide you. Oh, okay.
He ran over to the Cutemar Crusaders who had witnessed the entire event in awed silence.
Are you all okay? Yeah.
Skulu spoke up.
That was awesome,
she said with an excited smile.
You really taught those stupid furbles a lesson or two. We have to keep running. Just follow me,
Pipsqueak said with a little determination.
I think I can get us home. Right behind you, Pipsqueak.
Applebloom nodded.
Are you okay to run now, Skulu? I think so. I think I'll be fine,
Skulu said as she got back to her hoofs.
Let's move. Lead the way, Pipsqueak,
Sweetable chirped. With that, the four resumed their escape, leaving the wolves in their ongoing fight. After a while, the wolves' battle ceased. With Nate's back leg trapped in Bond's teeth, and his neck locked in Cletus's fangs. With a loud snarl he shook both wolves off him, and gave them each a well-deserved slap on the nose.
They're getting away. We can still catch them. Come on.
With a newfound fury, the wolf pack resumed their chase. The foals may have had a good head start, but that wouldn't last for long. A little bit further. Now take a left. Pipsqueak was leading the ponies through the woods, following the directions given to him by the boys without a moment's hesitation. They were no longer running as fast as before, making sure not to overexert Skulu's still sore leg muscles. All right, you're about to come up to a rock. Stick to the right of it and keep going.
We're going past the right side of that rock,
Pipsqueak announced to the fillies.
Okay, Pipsqueak.
Applebloom nodded.
I think we can make it. We're going home.
Pipsqueak nodded.
We have to be almost there.
Pip, it's not going to be that easy.
Huh? But you said you'd guide us home,
he said softly. The 3 fillies looked at him puzzled.
"Who are you talking to, Pipsqueak?"
Sweeterbelle asked.
"You mean you don't hear him?"
"Who?" "I can only show you the way. The rest of the work will be up to you. Don't be afraid, okay, Pip?"
"Afraid of what?"
Pipsqueak whispered. Suddenly he brought himself to an abrupt stop, the fillies screeching to a halt as well. They saw what the voice was warning Pipsqueak about. Before the ponies was a river, a wide river, its current travelling fast, its source no doubt coming from a waterfall some distance away. It would be impossible to swim across without being swept away. Pipsqueak saw no shallow part to it, nor an end to the flow. All he saw was the rickety rope bridge that stood feebly before him, with several planks missing, the ropes old and rotted, and the structure having seen Celestia knows how many years of disrepair. It seemed like their luck had run out.
Maybe,
Sweeterbelle said meekly.
"Maybe if you go one at a time." "There's no way that thing can support even one pony,"
Skooloo protested.
"We have to find another way across." "But we might not have the time."
Applebloom frowned.
"Who knows how close those wolves could be?"
"Pip, all 4 of you can cross it together."
"What?"
Pipsqueak exclaimed loudly.
But it can't be strong enough for all of us."
"If you go carefully but quickly, you all will make it across. I wouldn't have brought you here if I didn't think you could do it."
There has to be another way."
"I wish there was. By the time you find one, it'll be too late. The wolves are getting closer. It's now or never. Please, Pip, trust me." Pipsqueak shook a little as he looked at the bridge once again. His entire body was full of fear, knowing that one wrong step would be the end of the bridge and him and his friends. His head told him no. His nerves told him no. Yet his heart was saying otherwise.
"We have to cross,"
he announced to his friends.
"Together." "What?"
A collective shock was among the Crusaders.
"You can't be serious,"
Skooloo argued.
"What makes you think that thing can hold all 4 of us?" I don't know."
Pipsqueak closed his eyes.
"I just know that right now it's our only hope." "It's hopeless then,"
Skooloo shouted at him.
"No matter what you say, we can't cross it."
Pipsqueak walked forward, placing a hoof on the first bridge plank. As he predicted, it shook and creaked. The sound made him let out a panicked yelp.
"Don't do it, Pipsqueak!"
Applebloom yelled. After a moment he continued on, taking a step onto the next plank, and then the next, and then the next. With all 4 hoofs on the bridge, he looked over at the Crusaders.
We can do this. If we go carefully enough, we're all going home. I promise."
Sweeterbelle looked at the bridge with concerned eyes. She let out a small whimper and approached it, setting a hoof on it. After a little hesitation, she started to walk atop the planks, slowly and carefully, not to make any sudden movements.
I trust you, Pipsqueak."
Skooloo glanced at Applebloom, then at the bridge. Despite every last part of her screaming it was a bad idea, she took the step. After the initial shake, she took the next step, and was finally crossing the bridge as well.
"Me too, Pipsqueak. Come on, Applebloom."
Applebloom was the only one left. She was also the one who was the most frightened. She feared that simply stepping onto the bridge would break its fragile hold. For a while she debated with herself whether or not to attempt it. It wasn't until she saw her friends waiting for her that she knew what had to be done. She cautiously walked forth and stepped onto the bridge. She quickly stepped back.
I can't." "Applebloom,"
Pipsqueak shouted.
"we're not leaving without you. You can do this."
Applebloom looked right at Pipsqueak, the fear on her face evident. Gritting her teeth and practically shutting her eyes, she took the step, and began the treacherous trip. Pipsqueak looked forward.
"Every pony, just keep it slow."
He resumed crossing, the creaking sounds answering each step. His stomach in knots and heart beating a mile a minute, he remained as careful as he possibly could.
"That's it, kiddo. Just keep it slow and steady.
This voice he kept hearing, that only he could hear. Somehow it gave him confidence to continue.
We're doing okay so far.
He looked behind him, seeing the 3 scared fillies, also doing their best to keep going forward.
That's it, guys. Just a little bit further.
The trek seemed like it would go on forever. However, Pipsqueak felt his hoof hit solid ground. It was the other side of the river. He fought the urge to simply jump across, knowing that it could endanger his friends. He stepped onto the stable ground and watched as the Crusaders were getting closer to the end as well. Sweetabelle was the first of the fillies to make it, breathing a breath of relief as she stepped off the last plank. Scootaloo would be next, closing her eyes and panting as she tried to bring her heartbeats back to a normal rate. That just left Apple Bloom. Apple Bloom was taking the most time out of the 4, her fear keeping her pace slow. She glanced down at the river below and froze.
Ah!
The howls from the distance signified that the wolves were close.
The wolves!
Scootaloo shouted.
Apple Bloom!
Apple Bloom panicked and took an immediate step onto the next plank. The plank behind her let out a sudden creak, followed by a loud snap, as it broke beneath her hoofs.
Ah!
She let out a scream as she felt herself falling off the bridge. She used her forelegs to latch onto the plank before her, holding on with all her might. The rest of her body was attempting to drag her down into the river below.
No! Apple Bloom!
Without a second thought, Pipsqueak stepped back onto the bridge, racing over to her as carefully as he could. He held out his own forelegs and wrapped them around hers, grunting as he tried to pull her back up.
Hold on, Apple Bloom! Apple Bloom! Pipsqueak!
Both Sweetabelle and Scootaloo called out, watching the scene in pure terror.
Pipsqueak!
Apple Bloom looked up at him, eyes soaked with tears.
I can't get back on. Go save yourself and the others. Ah!
Pipsqueak reared his body back as he kept his hold on her legs. He felt himself making no progress whatsoever.
I won't let you fall. We're all going home.
Pipsqueak's legs were beginning to feel numb. He knew he had exhausted every last bit of his strength, and the best he could do at that moment was keep her from falling. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to pull her up. He wanted her on the other side with the others. He wanted to save her. Slowly the numbness started to fade. He felt something new, like another set of hooves pressing gently against his. He opened his eyes to see what it was he was feeling. Nothing. There was nothing there, yet he could still feel it. "You can do this, Pip. I'm right here with you. Use everything you have left to pull her up." Pipsqueak let out a small nod and pulled harder. Whatever it was he felt seemed to be giving him strength. With all the effort he could give, he pulled Apple Bloom back onto the plank, holding her close.
"He did it!"
Scootaloo exclaimed.
"Hurry back over here, guys."
"He'll be all right, Apple Bloom," Pipsqueak told her gently, feeling just how shaken up she was after the ordeal. "I'll stay close to you." Apple Bloom let out a sniffle as she nodded.
"Right."
The 2 ponies resumed their crossing of the bridge. Thankful the safety of the end was not too far. After a few more steps, they made it to the ground and stepped off the bridge. Sweetabelle and Scootaloo quickly ran over to them.
"I can't believe it,"
Scootaloo said.
"You're both safe."
Apple Bloom immediately wrapped up Pipsqueak in a tight and thankful hug, the colt blushing slightly.
You saved my life,"
she sobbed.
"Not yet,"
Sweetabelle cried out, pointing to the other side of the river.
"They're coming."
The 3 wolves were racing towards the river, a fiery rage burning in their eyes.
"If those fools can do it, we can too,"
Nate barked out.
"Let's go."
Even without slowing down, they all started to cross the bridge. Pipsqueak's eyes widened as he saw the wolves get midway across. "It's okay, Pip. They can't hunt you anymore." As if on cue, the brittle ropes on the pony's side snapped, no longer being able to keep the bridge over the water. The wolves let out panicked howls as they fell into the cold river, frantically trying to swim out as the current swept them away. Soon they were out of sight, and their howls faded into the distance. As the voice had said, they could no longer hunt the foals.
Talk about a lucky break.
Skulu sighed in relief.
They're finally gone for good. Yeah!
Sweeterbell nodded.
Do you know the rest of the way home, Pipsqueak?
Pipsqueak looked away. He was unsure where to go from here, but the corner of his eye caught something. Rather, it was some pony. Standing a few yards away was what Pipsqueak thought was a pony, a stallion to be exact. However, he seemed transparent and had a strange pale light around him. Pipsqueak glanced over at the form in shock.
Guys, do you see that? See what?
Sweeterbell looked over. She saw nothing out of the usual.
I don't see anything. Me neither.
Skulu shook her head.
Is something the matter, Pipsqueak?
Applebloom walked over to Pipsqueak. He already knew that she couldn't see the stallion either. Without a word, the stallion started to slowly walk ahead. His steps left no sound, nor disturbed grass beneath his hooves.
Everything's fine. I think I know the rest of the way home.
Pipsqueak walked ahead, intent on following the spirit to wherever it was going. The fillies remained close to him, following along. Pipsqueak knew that by following whatever it was that he was seeing, they were sure to make it back to Ponyville. "Pip, are you awake, kiddo?" It was the last night of Patch and Pipsqueak's camping trip. Princess Luna's stars shone in the dark sky, while her moon loomed peacefully amongst them. Patch was relaxing atop a blanket he laid out for himself and his younger brother. He looked down at the colt, who was comfortably curled up close to his forehoofs. Pipsqueak's eyes were shut, and his chest was slowly rising and lowering, showing the stallion that his brother had fallen asleep. Patch gently rubbed the colt's head, careful not to disturb his slumber. "Pip, I know that when I come home I always talk about how great it feels being in the Royal Guard. And I really do think it's a wonderful experience in my life. But there will always be one thing that tops that. One thing that I know can never be outdone." He gave a slight smile as he pulled his hoof away from the colt's head. "And that's having you as my little brother." Patch lowered his head slightly and started to frown. "When we get home, I have something I need to tell you and Mum and Dad. Something I know you won't like, and it really upsets me too." He glanced up at the moon, admiring it for a brief moment. "I have to go away for a while. I found out about my orders before I came home. I knew that I would have to deploy one day, but so soon. And while you're still growing up. It really hurts me, Pip. Knowing that I'll be missing a full year of being with you," he continued, his voice filled with sadness that he normally would try to hide. "So much could happen that I won't be able to witness. By the time I get home, you could very well not even need me around anymore. You'll be building your own campfires, telling new friends the stories I shared with you, showing them all you know about the stars and constellations. You'll be your own pony, Pip. But I've always known that would happen. When I look at you, I see a colt who will grow up into a strong stallion. You're going to do so many outstanding things, things that I could never accomplish. You'll be earning your cutie mark and showing all of Equestria just how great you are. And one day, you'll meet that special girl who you'll gladly give your love to, and she'll give hers back to you. If I was to miss seeing all that—" He stopped momentarily to allow a single tear to escape his eye. "Pip, no matter what happens, you will always be the most important pony in my heart. No pony can or will take that place. Thank you so much for being part of my life, and letting me be a part of yours." He closed his eyes and lowered his head to Pipsqueak's, nuzzling his brother gently. "I love you, baby bro." Pipsqueak shook his body a little, but was still deep in his slumber. After a few moments he let out a whimper and said in a quiet whisper, "I love you too, Patch." Patch smiled once more and lowered his head to the ground. The two brothers remained close to each other as the stallion slowly drifted to sleep. Patch continued to make his way through Whitetail Wood, knowing that his brother was close behind, along with his new friends. He had no idea what strange phenomenon had brought him there, whether by magic, fate, or something else. All he knew was that the moment he heard Pipsqueak saying his name, he understood why he was there. A smile formed on his face as he continued on. He had no idea what would come next after they made it to Ponyville, but all that mattered to him was that Pipsqueak was safe. He looked ahead, seeing that soon his task would be complete. He stopped, and simply stood still, closing his eyes. He felt his spectral body start to fade away. Soon he would be as he was for the past year, simply a memory.
Huh? Wait!
Pipsqueak cried out as he raced forward.
Don't go! Don't go!
Patch's form had completely vanished before Pipsqueak could make it to him. Pipsqueak was standing where the stallion stood moments ago, a small hill overlooking Ponyville. The sight of the town was well welcomed by the colt, yet it was not enough to bring forth a smile.
I didn't get a chance to thank you,
Pipsqueak whispered to himself sadly, unsure if the spirit could hear him.
Look, it's Ponyville!
He heard Scootaloo exclaim excitedly.
We made it!
Pipsqueak looked over and saw the 3 fillies rush over to him, smiling huge grins.
You did it, Pipsqueak! You got us all home!
Sweetabelle chirped.
Yeah, I guess I did.
He nodded.
Pipsqueak?
Applebloom walked over and looked him in the eyes.
What's the matter? You should be proud of yourself. I saw him, Applebloom. Saw who?
Scootaloo asked. Patch. It was like he was here. He told me how to take on those wolves. He guided me to the bridge and to Ponyville. And I felt him when I was pulling Applebloom back onto the bridge. I even saw him just now. Then he vanished. I know it was him.
But there's no way.
Scootaloo shook her head.
We didn't hear or see a thing. How come you did?
Applebloom smiled slightly. I think I know what happened.
Huh?
Sweetabelle looked at her, confused.
What happened?
Well, Granny Smith always says that the ones we love don't really go away when they leave us. They stay here. She placed a hoof on Pipsqueak's chest, where his heart was. He looked at her in stunned silence. You had Patch in your heart the entire time, so it was like he was really there, helping you. Pipsqueak looked at her and smiled a little. You think that really did happen?
Ah!
Scootaloo groaned and stuck out her tongue.
That's enough sappiness for today. Who knows what really happened back there? All I know is that Pipsqueak,
she grinned,
was really awesome. Like, almost Rainbow Dash level of awesome. You're a real hero, Pipsqueak.
Sweetabelle beamed.
We're proud to call you a Crusader.
Crusader? Really? He said, blushing a little from all the praise.
Yeah, bet.
Applebloom nodded.
You're one of us now.
Scootaloo let out a sigh.
And after all that, none of us got a key mark. But I did get a wicked costume idea for Nightmare Night. Yeah, the camping trip was sort of a bust.
Sweetabelle agreed.
Well, it's not that late.
Pipsqueak spoke up.
Maybe my parents will let us finish the camping trip in my backyard. That sounds way safer.
Applebloom nodded.
Let's get going, Crusaders.
The ponies all started to rush towards the town, laughing and cheering along the way. Pipsqueak trailed behind, but suddenly stopped as he reached the bottom of the hill. He felt a familiar hoof rubbing his mane, one that he knew well. He spun around and looked up. Standing before him with a huge grin was the spirit who remained with him throughout the ordeal, his older brother Patch. Pipsqueak stared up at him in awe for a few moments, before a smile formed on his face.
Patch, I knew it was you. Thank you. For everything.
I'm so proud of you, Pip, Patch said in a gentle voice. Don't worry, I'll be watching over you. Pipsqueak felt tears building up, as he prepared for what would be the final thing he would get to say to his brother.
I love you.
Patch nodded as his grin softened to a warm smile. I love you too. Take care, baby bro. Patch slowly turned and started to walk off, his form vanishing under the light of the full moon. That was Chapter 5, the last chapter of Brotherly Bond by Crash Jet. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. What do you think of my reading? Leave your feedback and ideas in the comment section below. If you're not interested in the future of my channel, feel free to leave now. I am a man of many hobbies, and I rarely stick to one type of activity for too long. This means that there's a big possibility that this will be the last video on my channel. If I receive requests, however, I repeat, might consider doing this again. Because this was fun, amazingly fun. Many manly tears fell during the recording of this fanfic. And I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. But I have other things that interest me more right now. That was all. I hope to see you again sometime.